You don't mean to do it. That's the first thing you need to understand. You're 17, and the reason you're awake at 2:13 a.m. is not because you're a genius, not because you're a criminal mastermind, not because you have some childhood backstory involving spies and broken satellites and a secret folder hidden inside a flashlight. You're awake because your laptop is old, your sleep schedule is cooked, and you promised yourself you'd fix one stupid error in one stupid school project before tomorrow. That's it. Just one error, just one more thing before bed. But the thing about being smart, the thing nobody tells you, is that sometimes smart is just another word for being the only person in the room who notices the loose floorboard. And tonight, you notice something. Not on purpose. Not because you were looking for it. Because the system you were poking at wasn't supposed to connect to anything important. And yet it did. A weird hidden path. A sealed directory. A forgotten authentication layer with the digital equivalent of a door left cracked open in a building that was absolutely, definitely not supposed to have cracked doors. You click once. Then again. Then the screen changes in a way that makes your stomach go cold. At first, it looks like a joke, a fake page, a decoy, a training sandbox some bored administrator left behind. Then you see the labels. Restricted, tiered access, emergency compartment, launch protocol archive, and one line that makes your mouth go dry so fast it feels like you swallowed sand. National Continuity Command. You sit back in your chair. The room is silent except for the fan in your laptop whining like it's scared too. You tell yourself to close it. You tell yourself this is some kind of internal simulation, some government training environment, some weird dead-end folder with a dramatic name and nothing inside it. So you click deeper. That's when you see the codes. Not just one. Not just a file name. A whole chain of them, stacked in layers you were never supposed to see. Verification sequences, authorization logs, rotating access schedules, protected contingency material. And then, in a tiny window at the bottom of the screen, a phrase that turns your blood to ice. Reserved for nuclear command continuity. You don't breathe, you don't move. For one insane, suspended second, your brain refuses to understand what your eyes are looking at. Because nobody in your life has ever said the words nuclear codes in a normal tone. Because nuclear codes are supposed to belong to movies, to generals, to war rooms, to people in dark suits with clipped voices and folders that don't exist. Not to you. Not to a teenager in a bedroom with a cracked phone charger and a poster falling off the wall. You refresh the page. It's still there. You open another tab. Still there. You pull up the metadata, and the metadata is worse because it confirms everything. This isn't a prank. This isn't a test. This isn't a school project gone weird. This is real enough to make your hands shake. And because you are 17, because you are curious, because you are stupid in the very specific way teenagers are stupid when something impossible is sitting in front of them, you do the one thing you absolutely should not do. You take a screenshot, then another, then you save the page. Not because you're planning anything. Not because you're evil. Because your brain has entered the phase where it is no longer making decisions. It is just collecting proof that the world has broken. You sit there staring at the files, and your mind starts doing what minds always do when they are terrified. It starts building stories. Maybe this is bait. Maybe somebody is watching. Maybe your IP is already flagged. Maybe this is a classified honeypot, and the second you touched it, a screen somewhere in a basement lit up with your name in red letters. Maybe there is a man in a chair right now saying, "We found him." You almost laugh. Not because it's funny, because if you don't laugh, you might panic so hard you throw up. So you do the safest thing you can think of. You close the laptop, then you open it again. The folder is still there, still waiting, still impossible. And now the fear shifts shape. Because it's no longer just about what you found. It's about the fact that you found it by accident. If you can stumble into this, then someone else can too. Or worse. Someone already has, and nobody noticed. That thought is so much worse than the first one that your chair suddenly feels too small, and your room feels too thin, and the air feels borrowed. You spend the next hour doing the dumbest possible version of professional confirmation. You check public references, you look for internal naming patterns, you compare schedules, timestamps, system architecture, access labels, Anything that will tell you whether you're hallucinating or whether the most dangerous machinery on Earth is sitting behind a login page that should have been impossible to find. And every answer points in the same direction. This is not fake. This is not a drill. This is not a broken toy version of power. This is the real thing. The kind of real that makes countries nervous. The kind of real that lives behind walls people die to keep shut. You feel the moment your childhood ends, and it is not dramatic. There's no lightning, no music swell, no cinematic flash of destiny. Just you, alone in a dark room, realizing that the world is held together by systems that should not be this fragile. And worse, that you've touched one. You back out. At least, you try to. But by then, you've already seen enough to know that what you found is not just sensitive. It's catastrophic. A sealed chain of launch-adjacent authorization files, redundant control instructions, emergency response routing, geographic tags you were never meant to connect, and a live validation pathway that should have been air-gapped 100 layers ago. You understand one thing immediately. If this is real, then the people protecting it are going to know somebody looked. Not eventually, soon. Maybe already. You disconnect the laptop from the network. You pull the battery. You hold the machine in both hands like it might explode. And for the first time in your life, your biggest problem is not school or money or your mom asking why you're still awake or whether you've been lying about homework again. Your biggest problem is that you may have just stepped into the center of a machine that ends the world for a living. The next morning, you act normal. You always act normal. That's what saves you in the beginning. You eat cereal. You answer your mom with the right amount of grumpiness. You go to school. You sit in class and stare at the whiteboard while your mind replays the folder names over and over like a prayer you hate. Nobody notices. That's the first miracle. And then the second miracle is that by lunchtime, the news hasn't broken. No black helicopters, no emergency alerts, no armored vans at the curb. No men in dark coats asking questions. Just you, moving through the day with a secret so heavy it feels physical. You can almost convince yourself maybe you misread it. Maybe it was a backup directory. Maybe it was part of a simulation. Maybe you're overreacting. Then your phone vibrates once. Unknown number, no caller ID, just a message. We need to talk. That's all. 3 words, and suddenly every inch of skin on your arms tightens. You don't answer. Your heart beats so hard it makes your vision pulse. A second message comes through. Do not delete anything. Now you know. This is real. Somewhere, somebody saw the breach. Somebody traced it. Somebody knows a 17-year-old is sitting in geometry class while the government tries to figure out whether he accidentally touched the most dangerous files on Earth. You look around the room. Everyone is just living, laughing, texting under desks, passing notes, arguing over lunch plans, and you realize something horrifying. The world doesn't stop when it gets dangerous. It keeps moving. It keeps pretending. And now you are trapped inside the one part of it that cannot afford to pretend. By the time you get home, the front door is unlocked. That is the first thing that feels wrong. The second thing is your mom's shoes by the kitchen. She's supposed to be at work. She's sitting at the table with her hands folded so tightly they're white at the knuckles. She looks up at you like she already knows something bad happened, but not which kind. There are 2 men in plain clothes beside the window, not uniformed. That's how you know they're serious. One of them introduces himself with a voice so calm it feels rehearsed. He says your full name. Then he asks if you know why they're here. You do. But you say no anyway, because saying yes would make it true in a way you're not ready for. He asks for your laptop. You hand it over. He asks where else you've logged in. You say you don't remember. He smiles like he's heard that line before. Your mom keeps looking between your face and their badges like she's trying to translate a language she never wanted to learn. Then one of them says the word classified, and your mother's expression changes. Not into fear, into something older. Something like grief before the body catches up. You sit at the table while they ask questions that sound impossible to answer. How did you find it? Why did you access it? Who did you tell? Have you copied anything? Have you shared it? Do you understand the seriousness of what you've done? And you do understand. That's the problem. You understand too much. You understand enough to know that if you answer badly, everything gets worse. You understand enough to know that if you answer honestly, It may get worse anyway. So you do the only thing a scared kid can do when the adults in the room are carrying the weight of nations. You tell the truth as carefully as you can. You found it by accident. You didn't know what it was. You were curious. You saved screenshots. You didn't send them to anyone. Not yet. The room goes very still. That word matters. Not yet. The agents exchange a look so small your mother probably misses it. But you don't. Because at that moment you realize they are not just asking what you did. They are asking what you might do. And they are afraid of the answer. The next few days vanish into fluorescent light. Questioning. Paperwork. Phone seized. Accounts frozen. School administrators speaking in low voices. Your mom crying in the bathroom when she thinks you can't hear. The neighborhood whispering. The internet, somehow. Already circling your life without knowing your name. And then the real nightmare begins. Because the thing about classified material is that the truth never stays contained. Something you saw was never supposed to be seen. Something you touched was never supposed to be touched. And now people higher up than you, people with clipped voices and impossible clearance levels, are trying to decide whether you are a threat, a witness, a liability, or a kid who got too close to something enormous. You are not allowed to know which one is worse. At some point, an older man in a government building tells you, very quietly, that what you found concerns continuity procedures for Nuclear Command Authority. He doesn't explain much. He doesn't need to. The phrase itself is enough. There are only a few categories of information in the world that make adults stop talking like adults. This is one of them. You ask him, in a voice that doesn't sound like yours, whether they were actually accessible. He looks at you for a long second. Then he says, "They shouldn't have been." That sentence changes everything. Because it means the impossible thing happened. Because it means the system failed. Because it means the world is more brittle than anyone admits. And because now there is no clean ending, no way to unsee it, no way to pretend you were never there. Weeks pass, then months. Your life becomes a shrinking circle. School becomes hearings. Hallways become stairs. Friends become careful. Teachers become nervous. Your mom becomes tired in a way sleep can't fix. And you become the kid whose name appears in places it should never appear, attached to words like breach, national security, and unauthorized access. People argue about you online without knowing you. Some call you reckless. Some call you a hero. Some say you exposed a system nobody should ever have trusted. Some say you nearly got people killed. Some say both things can be true. And the worst part is that nobody is fully wrong. That's the real curse. Not villainy, not innocence. Ambiguity. Because if the files were real, then the system was real. If the system was real, then it was vulnerable. If it was vulnerable, then someone should have fixed it long before you found it. But if you hadn't found it, you never would have known. And if the wrong person had found it first, the consequences would have been unthinkable. So now every adult who touches the case is trapped in the same impossible question. What do you do with a mistake that could have ended civilization? You asked one question. The world answered with silence, panic, and a door that never should have opened. And somewhere inside all that silence is the part nobody wants to say out loud. You were a kid, not a spy, not an operator, not a villain, just a kid who clicked one thing too far. And now everyone powerful enough to control the story is trying to make sure it never happens again. Not because they think you're dangerous, because they know the system was. And if a 17-year-old could reach it by accident, then maybe the thing they've spent decades calling impossible was never impossible at all. Maybe it was just hidden well enough. Maybe that's the real reason they're hunting you. Not because you saw the truth. Because you proved the lock was never as strong as they said. That's when the fear changes again. It stops being about arrest. It stops being about punishment. It becomes something colder. Something like responsibility. Because if you found one sealed door by accident, how many more are there? How many systems are one mistake away from failure? How many things are kept secret not because they're safe, but because people are praying nobody asked the right question? You don't sleep much after that. Some nights you lie awake staring at the ceiling while your phone sits dead across the room and your future feels like it's been folded into a smaller shape you didn't approve. Some nights you think about the message, "We need to talk." Some nights you think about the words, "Nuclear Command Continuity," and what it means that such a thing can live in the same universe as your math homework. Some nights you think about your mother sitting at the kitchen table, realizing her son didn't just get in trouble. He got noticed. And being noticed by the wrong system is its own kind of sentence. Years later, people will argue about what really happened. They'll debate whether the access was truly accidental. They'll debate whether the files were properly secured. They'll debate whether your panic made everything worse or whether the breach would have been discovered anyway. They'll turn your life into a forum post, a podcast episode, a comment war. They'll reduce the whole thing to a headline. Teen accidentally accesses nuclear command files. But the truth is uglier and stranger than any headline can hold. You were 17. You were curious. You were careless in the exact way every teenager is careless before the world teaches them what danger looks like. And for one terrible night, you stood at the edge of something that should not have existed in your hands at all. Not because you were chosen, because the system failed. That's the part nobody wants to live with. Not that a kid found the door, that the door was there. And if you ever wonder how close the world is to disaster, remember this. Sometimes it doesn't take a mastermind to open the wrong file. Sometimes it only takes a tired 17-year-old, a dead laptop battery, and one mistake that was never supposed to be possible.